The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is Lunch and Learn. It is the 15th of April. If you haven't submitted your income tax return, no sweat. It's not due till July. So take a deep breath, relax, and don't let the federal government take you down. Today, we're going to have Judy's going to give us a brief update on funding. She also sent me two links that I'm going to email out on the listserv as she's talking about these in terms of how you can get credit for payment and all that. And then Richard's going to show us all the new, some of the new information, not all the new information, the proportional training aspect of the new software release that came out this week. Chris, if you're here, and I haven't looked yet, we probably won't get to your question today. We will get to it. He had a diagram of alpha theta training session he did, Richard, and then he put on, I did 10 minutes of alpha theta, put on the V-Lite, I think it was gamma, and ran it for 10 minutes, recorded that, and then took it off and did another last 10 minutes of alpha theta training. Interesting screen. So if we get to it today, we will, otherwise it'll do it Friday.
Okay, doke.
Thank you.
Okay, Judy, take it away.
Okay, so I've kind of carried you all through my process that I was an early applier for a few things. The economic injury disaster loan, I think it was called.
Yeah.
That was the one that initially said they'd give you a $10,000 grant. They revamped it and they said they were going to do $1,000 per employee. And I went to a webinar the other day and they said that money was starting to come out. And lo and behold, I went into my bank yesterday and I have 5 employees and I had $5,000. So it is real. You know, I've heard nothing. I filled out for Paycheck Protection and for this EIDL and I had heard nothing, but the money showed up. So that makes me very happy. So there's hope for people. You can only get it with employees. Yeah, I think you have to have like 941s and all that put in. But speaking of that now, the other thing for employees, there's something else that there's something called the payroll retention credit, okay? And I gave Rob 2 links that I was looking at because I heard about it in a webinar yesterday. And it's been around for a couple of weeks now, but I didn't really know about it. They give you a credit of 50% of qualifying wages up to 10,000 total of anything paid after March 12th. So if you have employees, you can get payroll tax revamped credit. And I sent 2 links around, one that explains it and then one that answers questions, because it seems a little confusing and I don't exactly, I don't exactly understand, but I know if you haven't paid as much payroll tax in as $10,000, they'll credit to you anyway. So if you have employees, Rob is sending 2 links, so take a look at that. And
they just went out, now.
So, and then they verified that in the payroll protection program that hopefully we're going to hear about, they say, please, if you've applied, take the money, because if you decide not to because your people are on unemployment and making more money on unemployment, you're screwing somebody over who was in the queue that isn't getting the money because they allocated the funding to you. So that was interesting. I didn't realize that. And then again, the same thing is you have to use 75% of it for payroll, not the other things connected to payroll, but payroll, to get the full amount, to get that amount forgiven. So, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. As soon as I know if I've gotten money, I'll let you know. Meantime, my people are now starting to get unemployment and they're getting more money than I pay them, which is really quite interesting because of the 600. 2 of my employees have gotten whatever it is, 60% up to a max of 715 plus $600 more. So, they're not going to want to come back in, but I'm going to bring them back in if I get the PPP, because I think that's pretty important. They also were talking again yesterday about the self-employed folks who are trying to get unemployment, that it's a very, very complicated system that they haven't worked out. No money is probably coming that way for 3 or 4 more weeks to the self-employed ones because they don't have a forum to make it work. So you apply, then you're going to get rejected, which is really the first sign toward getting it, apparently. And the appeal is going to be what gets the self-employed folks to get the unemployment, which will be back retroactive. You know, you don't get your first week, but after that. So that's kind of what I wanted to pass. I know it is confusing, but you know, I'm doing my best to try to figure it out for me and for you all so I can bring it forth. So I don't know if there are any questions on it. If not, I just want to impart it. There you go.
Really
Well,
appreciate
thanks,
that.
Judy. I sent those links out. They're on their way.
It's very confusing. It's really
Yeah,
helpful to have
it is.
you parsing this out for us.
And I got the money. That's really the most amazing thing is, you know, you do it and then you send it into the ozone. You get no acknowledgement that you sent it. You know, I have the copy of my 27-page PPP app, but that's about it. So, you know, and now we wait. So we see what happens.
Well, it's a start, but doesn't that the disaster,
Yeah.
EIDL?
Well, and then there's a choice. You have to make a choice, folks, because the PPP, whatever money you do not get forgiven, you have 2 years to pay it. The EIDL, if you qualify for that, the interest is 3.75, and I think it's like 30 years with 1 year defer. So if you're looking for the money versus all the money to be forgiven, you know, you have to really think about which way to go. Not the easiest decision. So I'm waiting. We'll see. Once I get, I'm happy to forward and let you all know what I'm getting and how it works.
So the EIDL is not forgiven. You will have
No.
to pay it back. Oh, interesting.
I think it's up to 3.75 is the max, and you have a 1 year deferment on starting your payments.
Wow.
So it's a loan.
Oh, interesting. That's
And
not
no
a lot of
double
money
dipping
either.
or they'll get you.
Yes.
I'm sure they're going to get you if you try to do PPP and EIDL for the same thing. Or PPP and unemployment.
Huh.
You know?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. It's very confusing. Well, thanks. Just keep
And
telling us.
also watch
Sink in.
out for the scams. Watch out for the scams. Somebody actually called me and identified themselves as being from the IRS.
Kidding.
And the IRS does not call you. They send by mail. So, you know, there's all kinds of scams out now too. So be cautious as to who you give any information to.
Desperate times. Wow. Interesting.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Questions? All righty. Well, I think I'll move into.
Okay, Richard, do you want me to bring up the software or are you going to bring it up?
I got it. I've got a PowerPoint.
Okay, perfect. Lovely. Okay.
Because this is confusing and we need a PowerPoint to explain it. So I'm just checking to make sure everybody's unmuted real quick before I talk about it. What's happened is that you may have noticed that your software had an update last week. And there we go. And in that update were several new options for you, and they aren't that obvious. You know, you have to look for them to find them. You know, our goal at NewMind is not.
We don't see your screen if you put
Yes.
something up. We're not.
Yeah, thank you. I
Okay,
was
we don't see it.
unmuting people. Thanks.
Ah, gotcha. Oh, sorry. All right, go ahead.
So we have not. Our goal with NewMind is not to confuse people with really crowded screens and exotic arrays of buttons. We're not in this for the geeks. We're in this for the clinicians to keep it simple so that they can utilize these options if they're up to it. And again, with all of these different options, you're not expected to know them. You don't have to know them. And they are options. They're things that you can do above and beyond what we generally present. And those options, if you don't do them, you're not left behind. You're not an inferior practitioner. And that, again, another reason we put them in there, we're not putting them in there just to make a lot of money. We aren't charging you extra. If you have the pro software, these come with the pro software. Now, if you don't have the pro software, it doesn't come with them. But if you have the pro software, you get all these updates at no extra charge, and the development costs on our end are through the roof, very high. After looking at some of the software out there, we're giving you some of the best software and hardware at the lowest prices out there because we're trying to serve the counseling community. And we've had a lot of criticism from other people, particularly competitors or people who would like to resell our stuff. We've had other people, say, you people are just giving all this money away, and why are you doing that? And you're so much lower than everybody else, which is an incredibly irritating thing to say, to hear, because we're trying to give the highest value at the lowest cost. Because I was a clinician for 25 years, and trying to take care of poor clients who have no money and help them recover from problems with mental health and pay a clinic and staff is an onerous task, and then buy all this expensive equipment. I never had $10,000 or $20,000 to spend on equipment back in the 90s. And of course, the value of the dollar's changed and everything, but it's a burden, and we want the counseling community to have access to all of this, which is why we struggle so hard to give low prices. We also struggle to keep things really simple. We're not interested in making really complicated, fancy, high-end stuff for geeks. So if that's your thing, you're probably not going to be happy with us. But we're moved conservatively based on the research, and we try to present it after testing it, making sure it's safe and okay and clinically effective. And so what I'm presenting to you today is the concept of proportional training. We've added this to the software. I'm going to show you how to find it and how to use it. And feel free to ask questions in the coming weeks, and we can go over it again and again. And so this is, to me, one of the most important functions in neurofeedback that we've added. And there has been a controversy about it for 25 years, but it's very rarely talked about. It's little understood because a lot of the people who started off with neurofeedback were engineers. Whether it was at Thought Tech or Tom Collura at Brainmaster, or just people who did what engineers wanted them to do, which was the other companies that were just hiring engineers, and the engineers decided for you what was the best thing to do. And that was very frustrating for me as a psychologist because as I was working with my clients, I found some things worked better than others, and I couldn't get anybody to listen. And I could even find the research, and they still wouldn't listen because they were engineers, which is why you have NewMind, because I got so frustrated with engineers. So at NewMind, the engineers work for me, although sometimes I have to chase them down and threaten them to do the right thing because they have their engineer hubris, or we know better. And so as a clinician, this is what I found has been effective. Now, I've owned clinics for 25 years. At one point, I was running 5 clinics, 90 client hours a week for years, back in the late 90s into the 2000s. I have access to all of the technology. I've been doing this for a long time. And one thing that was really obvious to me at the very beginning was that proportional training was working way better than dichotomous training. And I even sat down with Tom Collura and had multiple conversations about this, and he didn't seem to get me or didn't want to do it. I couldn't tell which, but I could never get anywhere. Finally, I have my own people, and I've been able to implement this. So what is all of this hullabaloo I'm making about proportional training versus dichotomous training? Well, most of you do dichotomous training if you're just using tones and a threshold. In our software, the video and audio is proportional. We're the only company that does that. You can access in Thought Tech. There's a way you can access it. You can kind of access it in BrainMaster if you're good at coding software and you get into Event Wizard. But we make it available. And there may be one other. Stens may have it because that guy his engineer knew how to do that. But dichotomous is when reinforcement occurs when a specific parameter is attained. So you set a threshold and the client's either above or below the threshold. If we set the threshold at 8 microvolts and the client's brain waves vary up and down until it exceeds the threshold by going up to 9 microvolts, then it will set off a brief tone. So you've got this fixed threshold. Now, most of you use auto thresholding, which wasn't around when I started out. But auto thresholding just automatically sets the threshold based on the client's average. And then they have to beat their average to get a tone. Now, there's another kind of training that's been around just as long, but has been ignored in most of the software and engineers or hidden, and it's called proportional training or continuous reinforcement. Now, the arguments on this are published. They go back decades in the research. In fact, they go back many decades. And if you want to know the gory details, when Rob and my new book, Doing Neurofeedback, comes out, John Frederick held our feet to the fire, and I said, okay, then I'm going to write about this, and it's pretty arcane and in-depth, but I do a complete in-depth discussion with all the research in it, why this is the case. We may be persuaded to release that component of the book along with this access to the software, but I have to talk about it with Rob, and it may not be possible because of copyright laws, but we'll see. Proportional training is not when you get to a certain threshold and then you get a tone. The reinforcement is continuous, and it increases or decreases in proportional relationship to an effort or a task. There's no specific threshold, and the pitch of a constant tone increases as the amplitude increases, and the pitch decreases as the amplitude decreases. So when you're listening to it, there's a constant tone and the pitch is going up or down. Now, the constant tone may be discrete. So you hear like piano tones going beep, cling, 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 or you may hear a continuous flute tone, or you may have discrete flute tones. Either way, it's proportional training because you're constantly getting it, at different rates. It could be a piano note at every second, every half second, every quarter second. It could be eighth notes, quarter notes, it depends. And you can set that in the software. Now we have defaults, which are optimal defaults. And you could explore to see if you could get better response from people or find more optional. But we're giving you what we understand is the basic optional tones. And this is an ongoing process. We're going to continue to evolve this. I sat down with Martin months back and we had a long discussion so that I could build in the direction of what Martin was thinking as well as in the direction of what I'm thinking. Because Martin's one of the only other people who's even thought about this barely. So we are moving in that direction. It takes time, but we've got a first basic setup on it. So just to be clear, if you're using the audio on our system, you are getting proportional audio, but you don't have control over it. And you don't have control over the pitch and the tones and everything else. You just pick something from YouTube or music that you like in a music file, WAV file, MP3 file, and you play that. And as people are listening to the tones in your software, the volume goes up and down. And that is proportional. But that's all you can do with it. With the proportional training that we're setting in, you can actually determine what instrument you want to hear, or a group of instruments. You can play several instruments at once. You can have the pitch changing on those instruments. you can determine what the range of the pitch on those instruments is. So now you have an ability to do that. And in fact, in due course, in a very short time, you'll be able to listen to tones, and you'll listen to a jam session based on your brain. And we'll show you how to do that in due course too, because I'm a musician and this is something that I wanted to do for decades. So that's where we're moving with it. Okay, so which is best, dichotomous or proportional? Well, this is going to go on forever. And this is like all these classic discussions. What's better, Z-score or standard neurofeedback? Well, at the moment, Z-score doesn't have the lineage of research that standard neurofeedback does. And Coben and Hammond and Arns wrote an article about that. And so we're all waiting to see if Z-score really is any better than anything else. It is effective. And it's the same thing with dichotomous and proportional. Bierbaumer and Kiesel conclude that feedback should be as immediate as possible, and that if shaping towards a goal is indeed part of the process, then ongoing and immediate proportional feedback makes the most sense. Now, Bierbaumer and Kiesel actually did research, and that's when they did it, and that was their conclusion. And Travis and Kiesel also did research and concluded that proportional works best. And that's based upon experimental design and their observations from the experiment. So far, proportional has won out in every case. And that makes sense because the reason for that is because you're getting constant feedback all the time.
I can add something, Richard. I sent you an article today. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. Maybe you've seen it. It was back in 2016 that talked about neurofeedback, what works and what doesn't. And from the research they did looking at other research, they came up with the more factors you put in to a neurofeedback training, the less effective it is. In other words, if you have a 4-channel training with 2 or 3 parameters for each channel, that's not going to be nearly as effective as a single channel training with 1 or 2.
Interesting. And
which fits into what you're saying.
Yeah. That's interesting. But that was something that was pretty well known and expected going back 20 years. So this thing of trying to make really complex feedback has not held up in terms of research. But what has held up is that giving dense, constant feedback is very powerful, because that's how we experience things naturally. Everything comes at us continuously, and we respond. And the more trial and error responses we have, the faster the brain learns. And this is all well known, densely documented. It goes back in behavior modification research. It goes back, 50, 60 years. I mean, this is something that's old and well established and exhaustively documented, which is why I knew it, because I was forced to learn behavior modification theory in depth, and I even taught it. So I knew the research. So this stuff about proportional training is not that elusive if you're a psychologist. If you're an engineer, you wouldn't know it. There's no reason you would. So when I trained people with Herschel 2-mum system, because Herschel provided proportional, he read the research and he did it. I was amazed at how well it worked. But his company couldn't keep up in the market, and Herschel eventually passed, and he went on, he was researching, he got more excited about other things than neurofeedback. So he kind of dropped the ball in that area and went into HEG development. But I had his equipment and was stunned by how effective it was, and I couldn't get that quality anywhere else. But Herschel was a PhD in electronics. He was a genius, acknowledged, and he did incredible work long before anybody else did in neurofeedback. So when using multiple criteria, such as seeking complex combination of component band criteria, dichotomous may be more practical. So that's the caveat. If you're training one thing Proportional is probably going to give you the best outcome. If you're using a lot of different things, if you're using 3 filters or 2 filters or 5 filters, dichotomous is probably going to give you the better outcome. And that's what the research has concluded so far. So when using multiple criteria, such as complex combination of component band criteria, dichotomous will be a more practical method. When seeking to achieve a single component band outcome, proportional training may be more effective. So you now have this ability in the software. I'm going to walk you through how you can do it. And we can cover this as many times in the coming Lunch and Learns as you want. So also we'll let you know that 4-channel coherence training based on Coben's work is now available, but I'm not covering that today. These things are too complicated and we have to go one thing at a time. But Honey and Rob can get together and work on it, and they may. So here it is. This is, you go into your setup and you select, start a folder and name it, and then you select, in this case I'm doing 12 to 15 hertz, and make sure the range is right, and then train up 75% Y, because that's what the research tells us is generally the most optimal, and of course some people need more or less. And here's where the trick is. To find this, you go over to the right-hand side where it says Session Settings. And in there, you'll see this drop-down menu, which most of you probably don't use much, except maybe if you're adjusting the auto-artifacting component. And we set it up this way on purpose. We're trying to keep the screen simple and stuff that you don't need that much just to do basic neurofeedback hidden and out of the way. So you come in here and you select Thermo Update. I recommend 200 milliseconds. The default is 100, but we're switching over to 200 across the board because we're finding that that's more effective. So you set that to 200, and that's the first thing you do. The second thing you do is you go down to this. Well, let me point it out. You can see it said right here, Reward Tone. Under Reward Tone, when you do the drop down now, you'll now find it says Proportional. Proportional. This also has other tones here, Morse, xylophone, flute. We just put those in at the beginning because we hadn't evolved this part of the system yet. But if there are particular instruments or tones that you think would be beneficial, please send them to us. If you have a WAV file that you want us to, as long as it's not copyrighted, include, you can please send that to us as well. So we'll be adding those new tones as well. And we may be adding new tones. We'll probably add new tones to Alpha Theta. I know we are, but this one thing at a time. So you go down, you select Proportional, and then that creates a little, over on the right, on the left-hand side, you can see that it creates a little musical note icon. And the icon, my thing out of the way, the icon looks like this. You have your little gear here, and next to it is the little musical note. And that'll show up under your 12 to 15 hertz component band filter. And you could do this with alpha or beta or theta, and you can do it to up train or down train, either one. And then you go, the next thing you would do is when you click on that little musical note, you'll get a screen that looks like this. And then that screen will offer you instruments, a flute, a grand piano, a string ensemble, and a sine wave. Put the sine wave in there for Martin to make sure he doesn't feel like he's being left out. Now, we haven't evolved it that far, but we're going in that direction. So we've got the flute, grand piano, sine. You can pick any one of these at the moment as a tone you want to train to. And you start select C2. So you get a choice of notes. There's a scale here. Most of you probably aren't musicians. It's amazing how many people in this field are, though, or who have been trained. But if you are, you select the note C2 as the starting note. It's not too low, okay? And then you go and you select C4 as the ending note. Now you could do a wider range, but it gets a little busy. Again, if you're musically inclined, this is, this will be easy for you to figure out. But you have to do it to yourself to figure it out, because you won't know what your client's experiencing until you do it yourself. If you're not
So is that going to give us like like a scale?
Yep.
Like da 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 da. But then you've gone 2 scales, so it goes da 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 da.
See,
Gotcha.
Rob's musically, he knows music, so he used the term scale and 2 scales. He figured it out right away. But if you're not musically inclined, just do it C2, C4, and it gives you a nice scale to listen to. And piano's nice because everybody's used to piano. If you get symphony, it might sound a little bit like A Day in the Life by the Beatles at the end, where it's going up and down, but you could do that too. And then you select unmute. And when you select unmute, it comes up as mute with green, which I always find confusing, but that's the way a lot of software is built. So this says unmute, and you click on it, and then it turns green. And then you click done. Go down here, click done. And now you've set up the musical tones. So here I've got 2 tones. In this case, I'm training 9 to 1 up and just monitoring 4 to 7 to see what happens. Don't have any, see there's no musical notes up. So select a threshold so that the client rarely hits the highest pitch tone. So if you set the threshold so they hit the highest pitch tone, it goes up and just keeps playing that note, which could drive you nuts. So what you do is you set the threshold as you listen to the client, sit there with them training, set the threshold so where it has it goes up and down nicely. And that's the level you'll want to set it at almost every time. It's not like dichotomous where you keep trying to adjust it up and down. You just find a sweet spot where you can hear the tones go up and down, and they go up pretty high, but they don't just keep hitting the high note. Although I have had clients who kind of like that more. Now, normally I could play this for you if I was doing a presentation at a meeting, because I actually spent all this time recording the tone. But what I found is that it doesn't play. So I'm sure nobody's hearing that.
I'm hearing it, Richard.
Are you? Rob, are you hearing it?
Not right now. Play it again.
I hear it.
Who's hearing it?
Play it again. I don't, but
This is Melissa. I hear it.
I hear it low, Richard. Can you increase the volume?
Oh, you're hearing it over my
Yeah.
over my system. Got it.
got it. It is a very poor version of Day in the Life by the Beatles.
It's actually very interesting to listen to, and
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is. I was just,
when it's your own brain.
yeah.
Okay, let me try to get to the next screen. And you can add a second tone. Why is it giving me? I don't know if you can hear that. That's a flute and a piano playing
I can hear
together.
that too.
So you could set the low tone for theta and the high tone for SMR, and you're playing tones that are somewhat commensurate with the frequency range because theta is lower down and SMR is higher up. So, these are things that you can experiment with so people can hear what their SMR is doing and what their theta is doing. And so they can learn to control SMR and theta by listening to the tones, and it creates music. And we'll be once we put a pentatonic scale in there, it'll make more of a melody. It'll sound much more like a melody.
Yeah, it's great that you have the scales in there that go up 3 or 4 or more scales, because as we get older, we lose high pitch hearing.
Yeah.
Just naturally and normally. Kids will hear a much greater range than we will as adults, and as we get older, then we lose some of that range. So that's nice, because then you could sit down with the client first in a session and just say, let me know which scale or which,
I think I lost.
Well, correct in understanding say playing mind do these tones in head training.
you wouldn't be playing it with music. You would just use the tones themselves.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you can set a proportional filter, like in this case, 9 to 11 up. Let's see, where did we go here? There we go. Yes, so you can set it so I actually was jamming with it the other day, but it'll sound much better when we get the other scales in there. Instead of just the major scale, we'll get a pentatonic scale. It'll work much better. So you can train high amplitude, low frequency alpha from Busy Mind down with this pretty successfully. One of the reasons I've been dying to create it, but it's also used for peak performance training. So now that we have this, I can do peak performance training the way I originally did it with Herschel's equipment, which worked really effectively. And but we can also train down Busy Mind. So to do that, you would select 8 to hertz, 10 hertz alpha filter down. So you put on 8 to 10 hertz, and then down 75%, and then do 9 to 11 alpha up. So you set it to 9 to 11, and then up at 75. So what you're doing is you're training up the dominant frequency, between 9 and 11, and you're training down the lower frequency, which is usually an indicator of a problem in the brain. Low frequency alpha means the brain is not functioning right. I mean, you've talked to people like David Kaiser, say, or even Jay Gunkelman to some degree at this point. That's kind of the clock frequency of the brain. It gives us an indicator of how well the brain is up and running. So this is a way of getting people to stop with the busy mind. A lot of times the busy mind occurs below 9.5 hertz. That's what we're starting to see here. And so you set that proportional filter to 9 to 11 up. So this one's up. I've also got 8 to 10 and 10 to 12 in here, so I can look at the others to see if what the other side bands are doing in the alpha range. So I can see the mid alpha range, 9 to 11, the low alpha range, 8 to 10, the high alpha range at 10 to 12. And I'll monitor the low and high while I do proportional training with the mid. So if you do that kind of thing, you're going to have 3 thermos, and you set the proportional option, and you see the music note icons like we just did. And then you set the 9 to 11 parameters as shown like we just did, but you're only setting it for the 9 to 11 because you're going to mute these other 2 so you can't hear them, because like Rob said, you don't want to put too much in the brain, confuse it. You're just trying to get that high amplitude alpha down. So, we can observe somebody training here, and this is somebody sitting there quietly training, and as they train their alpha down, of course it's going up. This happens to so many people with busy mind, and often it's at much higher amplitude. This person's not quite so bad, but it's going up. So when we add 2 filters in there and we look at them, we can see the 8 to 10 hertz up here and the 9 to 11 hertz down here. So as we train, we want these 2 to come closer, and for the 9 to 11 to come higher. That means more of the energy is going into the 9 to 11, the dominant natural frequency of the brain, and less energy is going into the 8 to 10 hertz. And you can see they start to come closer together, and sometimes the 8 to 10 comes down a little bit more, and the 9 to 11 comes up, and eventually you'll get this. And this was like 4 sessions in, I think, 4 to 5 sessions in, we got this person to flip it so that the 9 to 11 is higher and the 8 to 10 hertz is lower. So we got the brain to shift its entire mid-range frequency, and what that's doing is it's taking the dominant frequency, which is blue here and red here, you can see this is slowed alpha, and shifting it from around 8.5 to a more dominant 10 hertz range. Of course, you've got a little left over down there, but this is your goal, is to shift the midpoint of the alpha to the highest level of amplitude. One of the ways you tune into this being important is that children who aren't myelinating fast enough don't get up to the 9 to 10 hertz range early in life. The rule in neurology is if you don't have 8 cycles a second by 8 years of age, you've got a serious myelination problem. But you can even see it, mild ones, in kids who don't get up there fast enough. And it's pretty consistent, pretty well established in the research. Same thing happens as you get older. Your alpha dominant frequency slows down. When you get ill, your alpha frequency, dominant frequency slows down. If you have a thyroid problem and then adrenal issues, that combined issue, it can slow it down. If you have a liver problems, if your liver testing is not looking good, it's quite often found that the brain alpha slows down. Your mitochondrial output is diminished and you're losing beta. A lot of times your alpha dominant frequency slows down. So it's an indicator that things aren't good in the brain. And if you've got busy mind, it shows you're wearing your brain out and you're taxing your mitochondria because you're just constantly running a racket, stressing yourself out. You get that slowing. So this is just one way to focus on that stubborn high alpha busy mind. And I've actually gotten people to catch themselves doing the busy mind thing, doing this kind of training, and actually able to get them to get some good control over it. So here's one solution to that. Remember, it's not going to work with everybody. There's no one thing that works with everybody, although lots of people make all these grand claims. It'll work with a lot of your people, though. And we have other options coming up for the really tough customers. We might find that the 4-channel coherence actually does it. It might not. I haven't tried it with that group, but we'll give you the opportunity. Okay, so that's my presentation on proportional, and we'll do this a few times more, and we'll post this up on YouTube. So any questions?
Yes. Is this going to be available also in the home trainer?
Yes, definitely. It is presently available, I think, on both right now. It should be available on both.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you go in your software and you've updated your software last week, if you updated your software, you should be able to find this.
Yeah, I updated all the computers, so I brought one home. I'll check it out later today.
Fantastic. Yeah, and let us know, play with it. Come back on the Lunch and Learns and let us know what you think. And if you're shy about it, you can email Rob and I, and we'll talk about any of your ideas or any of your frustrations with it or any confusion, because, this is not going to be perfect the first time out. It works well. I tested it clinically with clients before this COVID thing happened. Thank God I got a chance to test it with my clients. But I think, there'll be time to perfect it. And we're going to take this a lot farther. Martin has some ideas and I have some ideas. We're really going to play with this some more. Any other questions? Comments?
I have a question. Richard, this is Tana.
Tana?
Hi. How do you explain this to the clients when you're trying to prepare a client to do this? First of all, you do it to yourself, but how do you explain it?
Thank you. I love that you said that. Yes, first you do it to yourself. If you're confused on how it works, the way to find out is do it on yourself first. And you'll see how you have to adjust it in order to get, the feel of it just right. It's very important to do it on yourself. For sure. In terms of explaining to him, I don't spend a lot of time explaining to him. I said, well, your alpha's too high or your theta is too high. So we're just going to work on that one frequency band and really just go after it. So I'm going to put a sensor at CZ, and I'm just going to go at the oldest part of your brain. And we're just going to work on trying to get that one thing down. And how we're going to do it, we say, is I'm going to play you a piano going up and down the keyboard. You listen to it, and I start it up, and they start listening. Oh, yeah, I hear it go up and down. Okay, well, when it's going up, that means your theta is getting too high. And when it's going down, that means your theta is coming down to where it should be. So I want you to listen for the low tones. After a while, you'll be able to find you can get control. And in fact, you can actually learn to control the pitch with your brain. I mean, I learned to do that 25 years ago. You can actually keep it high or keep it low. It's amazing how much control you can get over it.
And Tana, another thing to think about too, if you're doing multiple sounds like Richard demonstrated earlier, you can mute and unmute them as he showed you. So if you're working with a client during the session in the beginning, you might just say, when you hear this tone, this is doing this towards your theta or your beta or whatever. When you hear this tone, this is working on whatever, and just play them one at a time for, even a half a minute or a minute in the beginning while they're training and having a dialogue with them so they get what it is they're supposed to be hearing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, okay. So
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I don't know if I can formulate this question right, but if you've got a tone and you're training, let's say 8 to 10 down, let's just take his model here, and 9 to 11 up that you're monitoring, right? So you just want to be toning the 8 to 10 down. That's what you want to be looking at.
You could do it that way. Yeah, you could do it that way. I usually train the 9 to 11 up, and I don't give them any tone for 8 to 10 down. I'm just power training 9 to 11 up. Some people could benefit. But the thing that proportional training is most powerful is when you just using one single tone. So you'd want to train 9 to 11 up or 8 to 10 down. If you're going to do two things at once, the dichotomous tends to work a little better. But I find with these people with high amplitude alpha, it doesn't work that well. That the proportional works better.
Motion.
So
if you train 10 to 8 down and 9 to 11 up, the 9 to 10 band gets confusing signals, both up and down.
It still works. Still works. It works very well. But you could try to refine those bands. I agree.
Yeah, I would probably with two-component training.
I think you're going to find it doesn't make much difference because I played with it for years. But with this new format and maybe with the new software and the new signal processing, all these years later, maybe it would. Theoretically, it makes sense, but whether the brain can make that distinction, and every brain can make that distinction, is another question. So, you play with it, we'll find out. I mean, that's how we're going to find out. Martin's going to experiment with it. Others will experiment with it.
Certainly.
And they'll get back to us and say, it does work that way, or no, it doesn't. That's what we're going to find out.
Yeah, I could imagine, a relational training. It could work.
Well,
with Dyson, I wouldn't.
Is this done with the eyes open or eyes closed, or does it matter?
You do it either way. Either way. It's up to you. You can have them watch the thermo and listen to the tone. I think sometimes that helps. But some people do better if they just listen to the tone alone. It depends. Again, there's not one size fits all.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Let's just pick, and you're training 9 to 11 up, okay? And you set the tone for like C2 through C4, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when the tone goes up, so it's going up to C, D, E, F, G. Does it go to G? Is that what it goes to?
Because
Okay, so,
yeah, it's pure major scale this time. Yep.
okay, so when it goes up to G, that's when that's when you're training up, right? So
Yep.
you want them to listen for it to go up. You don't
Right.
want it to hang out in the low notes.
That's right. Right.
Of course, you can watch the screen and see what's going on the trim screen, but
You can
I'm
also
just
watch
trying
you can also watch the threshold as you do it, and it becomes very obviously quickly, how the tone relates to the amplitude.
Okay, cool. Playing music with your brain. I just love it.
Yep.
Is this as effective if you're just using the client's musical selection? Like if they just want to listen to music that they choose,
Well,
or
you
is
can
it more
you can already do that with our standard proportional auditory training.
Oh, okay. This is more specific to musical tones.
Yeah, this is more specific, more specialized, and it gives you
Gotcha.
a little more leverage with the brain, a little bit more power, because we're doing it proportionally and we're focusing. And some of you may find that if you have a continuous tone, it works better. I think it tends to work better if the tone is constant, but some people go nuts listening to a constant tone, and they would rather have discriminant tones, incremental tones like a piano going, in specific notes with space between each note. We're going to find out more. We have all have theories about this, and we want to dig into it deeper, but I think it's a very promising area.
Quick question, Richard. I understand you're going pentatonic then.
Yes.
That's the goal.
Oh, well, we're going to add that in because that is the most natural scale that's universally found, but also it makes more sense to the brain than the major scale does.
Absolutely.
Richard, did you say you have to go into the settings and change things in order to make this happen? I guess I wasn't clear on that.
Yes. And this will be uploaded so you can go and review how I did that. But going back to the very beginning, and I can't see my own screen.
Oh, okay. So you have to change it to proportional. What does it say right now in the default?
None.
It
says
says
default at none.
Yep, default is none. You have to go in and change it to proportional.
And then change it to 200 from 100.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can slow it down more. I've done two tones, and I've made it so I'm playing the bass register of the piano. At the same time, I'm playing a higher register in the piano, and I have the bass register going only one scale, so it does a lot of octaves and fifths, and then I have the higher register running freely, and then I put the bass register and I set it to like 500 milliseconds, so that slows the bass down, so I get a bass line and I get a lead line, so I'm kind of like creating a little jam in the brain, little jam session. With pentatonic scale, it'll be even make more sense to the brain, but it's kind of fun. It's kind of cool. So these are things you can do if you're into music at all.
Technical question, Richard. I assume the auto threshold is still working in the background, right? So
you can turn it on. You can turn the auto threshold on or off. I don't use auto thresholding because it's fooling around with how they're hearing the scale and shifting the rules a bit. I want them to hear the same scale all the time and just get it as high as I can. It's a different game than dichotomous. The auto scaling is really for dichotomous, but you could use them both at the same time.
You could. Okay.
As far as I know.
And switch it manually, switch it on or off, depending.
As far as I know.
Experiment. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, folks, we're a little past the hour, so it may have been a lot to hear all at once, but you can go up to YouTube in a couple of days as soon as we get up there and see the whole thing through. If you kind of figured some of this out, you can actually go to your software now and play with it, or later this week or over the weekend, and come back. Let us know what you think.
Great step. I appreciate.
Yep. Long time coming.
Very exciting. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great week. Anything happening Friday, Rob?
We have a question from Chris. He wants to show us some information.
That's right.
So put his question anybody else that has a question, when you email them, I prioritize them in the proper order when they were sent in. Then we can come back and answer questions about this too, as well.
Okay, sounds great. We'll see you all on Friday. Try it out. Have
All
some
righty.
fun. Yep.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.